Hello. A week or so ago, I did a short talk called Who Do You Think You Are? Part 1. And it's taken me a bit of time to get around to Part 2, but here it is. So in Part 1, I was talking about our sense of self and the things that we most strongly identify with. Well, things that we strongly identify with. In terms of possessions, things seemingly outside of ourselves, possessions and places where we live and so on. And today I want to talk more about how we, even more strongly than that, identify with what we tend to call our self, but I'm not sure that anyone really knows what that is. We talk about having a self. Sometimes religion or spiritual life is spoken of in terms of finding our deeper self or finding our true self. But Buddhism raises the question, do we have a true self? Is there something actually to be found if we engage in this pursuit of looking for our self? So we don't know exactly what this true self is, but we seem to live our lives based on an assumption or a view that there is something called ourself. There is some true identity, some essence which is ourself, which is enduring, or at least endures for the period of this particular life. So, how did the Buddha deal with the question of self? Well, like everything else that the Buddha taught, he looked first of all at his own experience before he made any decisions or any statements about things. And he recommended that we do the same thing. The Buddha said, don't just take my word for everything. Don't just believe that everything I say is true. Look into it in your own experience and discover for yourself if that is the case or not. So with the question of impermanence, for example, the teaching of impermanence, well, it's not specifically a Buddhist teaching, although Buddhism emphasizes it, but it's evident in the world all around us. We don't need to look far in our own experience to see impermanence at work. But in terms of looking for a self, looking for an essence or a true self or a true identity, what aspects of ourself can we say are ourself? Who do we think we are? Who are we? There was a philosopher, was it Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am. So does that mean that we are essentially our thoughts? Our thoughts dominate much of our experience, especially in our contemporary society. We're kind of plagued with thoughts all the time, most of them unwanted. So is that who we are? Are we our thoughts? Are we our thought processes? Are we the contents of our thoughts? If we look to our body, the sensations we experience in our body, we identify very much with our own body. This seems to be the home that we inhabit, our body, our physical home. So does that mean we are our body? We are our physical experience? Well, if we do a body awareness, a body scan, meditation, then we contact different parts of the body with our awareness, and we can get some very strong experiences. Parts of our body become very alive, very immediate. They are our direct experience at that particular moment in time. But does that mean that they are our self, what we could truly call our self? What we'll find is that sensations we experience in the body sometimes are strong, sometimes are weak, sometimes are not very evident at all. Sometimes a strong sensation in the body can completely disappear, completely change. So where has that sensation gone? Does that mean our self has disappeared if we identify too strongly with that sensation? Are we our body? Our body changes over time, doesn't it? I don't inhabit the same body that I did when I was first born. My body's undergone many changes. So, is there an enduring self to be found in the body? My body no doubt will go through further changes. I'm convinced of that just because that's what happens to everybody else. Don't see why I should be different. So I know that my body does not endure. So that suggests to me that anything which I might call myself, if I connect that with the body, it suggests that in this particular form I will not endure. I will not be lasting. We can look also at the feeling tones that we experience. Whether our experience is generally pleasant or generally painful or generally just neutral, somewhere in between. And how do we identify with those feeling tones? Well, the pleasant and the painful ones we identify with strongly. The neutral ones we don't tend to identify so strongly with, unless we're really practicing meditation and we find a way into that. But generally in our lives we identify strongly with the pleasant and the painful sensations. So does that mean our self is the feeling tones that we experience? Well, it can hardly be an enduring self, can it? Because pleasant feelings change to painful feelings, and then painful feelings change back to pleasurable experiences, but different ones. So it's never the same. There's never anything that we can really pin this idea of an enduring self onto. We can look at our emotions, which are a response to our feeling tone experiences. Emotions such as anger. Well, we could say that when we become angry, if we become really angry, obsessed by some object of our anger or hatred, then it's as though we become hatred. But that in itself is not a fixed thing, because that too will change. And if we experience a very pleasurable emotion, we experience a lot of joy or happiness or love or compassion, that also is an impermanent emotion. So again, there is no evidence of a fixed or enduring self in that experience. Our experience changes all the time, doesn't it? And the reason why we run into difficulties in our lives is because we don't acknowledge that fact, or we don't accept that. We want something at least to be lasting. So we try and hang on to things. But even more than that, more subtly than that, we constantly create or recreate that which we might call our self. But it's all really be building castles in the air, if that's the right expression, or building castles in the sand or something. They don't last, they have no foundation, they have no basis. There is no essential self-nature to be found in beings. So, but we're not happy with that. We're not comfortable with that. We don't like the thought that there is nothing fixed, nothing permanent that we can hold on to and say, yes, this is me. We are not our name, our identity. We're not our body, our feeling tones, our emotions. We're not our thoughts. What do we make of that? Well, in some ways, it's very liberating when we have experiences when we are free from any kind of selfing. So selfing is this expression that's come about, well, I guess in recent times, very recent times. I don't think it's a traditional Buddhist phrase as far as I'm aware. The verb to self, to make oneself into a self. But we do it every time we grasp onto something and also when we push something away. So it comes back to craving and aversion, doesn't it? When we crave something, we want something, it's as though our reaching out for that object is a becoming. We become not the object, but we become the craving, the movement, the desire towards that object. That's what we become. And we build that up. We try and make that into something very firm. We want something to hold on to, don't we? We want something to be or someone to be. We want to be somebody. We don't want to be a nobody. And similarly, when we, I notice this strongly, if I experience anger towards somebody or something, usually someone, but sometimes something, it's as though if I indulge in the anger, then I can feel that I'm creating something. I'm creating this person of anger. And there's no way I can identify that as being the true me. That's not my real self. That's just because there isn't a real self. Everything is changing. So what I've created there is, what can I call it? Well, actually, it's no more than a cloud. It's like a cloud of energy that I've tried to bring together, to coalesce, to make into something more solid. But it doesn't work. It's not a successful attempt. Sooner or later, it all just evaporates like a cloud. So we have to notice these times. I've learned to notice many of these times where I'm selfing. I'm creating something out of nothing, really, or creating something out of energy that I experience. It's a reactive energy, either craving or aversion. And when I let go of those things, when I notice what's going on, then there's a liberation. Oh yeah, I don't have to do that. I can be free of craving and aversion.